The first time that man called me by name, I understood that morning isn't just a wound. It's a door left slightly open, and someone, sooner or later, tries to walk in. 3 years earlier, I had buried my wife, Elena, under a rain that seemed designed to confuse tears with water. It hadn't been a dramatic death, no sirens in the distance, no movie-like goodbyes. It was one of those tragedies that arrive with the punctuality of a bill to pay. A sudden heart attack, the kitchen still warm, a cup of tea left half-finished. I had come home with the key in my hand and normality in my pocket, and within 5 minutes I knew I would never have either again. Since then, I had learned the choreography of surviving. Work, home, the silence bouncing off the walls, the refrigerator light left on too long, just to have something looking back at me. I had a teenage son, Mateo, who pretended to be tough so I wouldn't collapse. I also had a mother-in-law, Ada, who had suddenly become devoutly attached to my presence, as if my life were an inherited asset she had to keep inventory of. The public library was 2 blocks from my office. An old, clean building, smelling of paper, always a little like dust and a little like promise. In front of the entrance, beneath a canopy where the city pretended to protect the poor with shade, there was always him, a homeless man with a gray beard and hands too clean to be abandoned hands. He didn't beg. He didn't plead. He stood there like a skipped chapter from a book someone had decided not to read. I started leaving him money almost by instinct or maybe superstition. 20 euros, some coins, sometimes a sandwich. I didn't speak. He nodded, but not in a thankful way. It was a slow, almost courteous gesture, as if he were confirming an appointment we had made long ago and that I had forgotten. With time, inevitably the words came, not because I missed conversation, but because silence, when you carry it too long, starts searching for an exit. He never asked, "How are you?" That's a trap for the grieving. He talked about lateral things. The smell of rain before it falls. People who enter libraries with hands ready not to steal books, but time. One evening he told me, in a low voice, that families are like old houses. They look solid until you try to open a door that's been shut for years. He never asked my name. Yet when he said it right, like someone who had practiced it many times in his mind to avoid getting it wrong. Marco. I froze mid-gesture with my wallet open. Nobody called me Marco like that on the street. And it wasn't just that he knew my name. It was how he knew it. Without curiosity, without enthusiasm, without the greed of someone wanting something. He simply knew. The way one knows the time by looking at the sun. Do we know each other? I asked, and I hated myself for such a banal line. He gave half a smile, short and tired. No, but do you really think you know the people around you? It would have been easy to dismiss him as a lucid madman, one of those who learn to philosophize just to survive. But his eyes had no confusion of madness. They had the precision of observation. And I, maybe, had become vulnerable enough to confuse precision with kindness. A week later, on an afternoon that smelled of rust and premature sunsets, I found him different, not sitting, standing, as if the waiting had run out of patience. He saw me coming and, instead of nodding, took one step toward me. Just one, but it changed the air's temperature. Don't go home tonight. The words dropped dry, without decorations. No, please. No, I suggest. A command disguised as advice, and worse, the tone didn't ask for trust. It demanded it. I laughed, a short, nervous laugh of someone searching for an excuse not to be scared. And where should I go? To a hotel, or to a friend's. Doesn't matter. But not home. And don't call anyone to warn them. He glanced at my hands, as if afraid I'd use them to grab the phone. Tomorrow morning at 8, come back here. I'll explain. The rational part of me wanted to insult him. The wounded part, the one that still slept with one ear open, instead caught a small detail. He hadn't said, "Something will happen tonight." He had said, "Don't go home," as if what was about to happen wasn't a random event, but a scene already written with my address on it. Why? I asked, "Why should I listen to you?" He took my wrist. His grip wasn't that of a beggar. It was firm, controlled. And that touch had a strange effect. It reminded me of my father when he used to stop me as a child before crossing the street without looking, a simple gesture. Yet suddenly, I felt like someone who could still be saved. "Because you've been good," he said. "And kindness, Marco, always attracts two kinds of people. Those who need it and those who use it to get in." He let me go, said nothing more. I stayed there 1 second too long, feeling that if I insisted, I'd break something fragile, like a glass already cracked. That evening, I didn't go home. Not because I believed in prophecies, but because I believed in fear. And fear, when it's sincere, has a logic the mind can't yet explain. I took a room in an anonymous hotel near the station, one of those places where no one looks twice and the walls have seen enough stories to never judge yours. I lay on the bed fully clothed, as if sleeping were a luxury I couldn't afford. I listened to the elevator and the pipes. I imagined 1,000 scenarios, all with the same core. My empty house, my fragile life, someone touching it without permission. I thought of Matteo, who that night was sleeping over at a classmate's for a project, and I felt a dirty kind of relief that made me ashamed. At 2 a.m, the phone vibrated. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It vibrated again. And again. On the 4th ring, I picked up, my voice calmer than I felt. "Marco," a man's voice brisk. "This is Central. There's been an alarm at your residence. We sent a patrol. Are you home?" My heart jumped so sharply I thought I could hear the blood. "No!" A short pause, full of decisions on the other end. "Good. Don't return. Stay where you are. We'll call you back." I hung up and stared at the phone as if it had become dangerous. My body wanted to run. My mind wanted to deny. And between them, one phrase repeated with the cruel calm of a verdict. He knew. At 7:50, I was in front of the library. Cold although it wasn't cold. He was already there, sitting as usual, but the air around him had changed, like the same scene shot with a different lens. Same elements, more contrast, deeper shadows. He wasn't alone. Next to him sat a woman, elegant without display, holding a slim folder. Hair neatly tied back, professional eyes. The kind of face that doesn't need to raise its voice to make it clear that you aren't setting the pace. "Marco," he said, and that time my name sounded like a key turning. "This is Dr. Rinaldi." The lawyer shook my hand. Cool skin, perfectly measured grip. "Pleased to meet you. Shall we sit?" We went into a small cafe with wooden chairs and yellow light that made everything look older, even the truth. We sat in the back. I ordered nothing. Not because I wasn't thirsty, but because I was afraid that even a sip of coffee would give my body the illusion of normality. "Your house was broken into last night," said the lawyer. Straight to the point. "They didn't steal. They were looking." "Looking for what?" She opened the folder, showing printed photos. Damage lock, forced window, a pair of gloves left behind, a stupid detail that becomes important only later. They didn't go in far because a patrol was nearby. We got ahead of them. I looked at the man from the library. "Who are you?" He lowered his gaze, as if he had anticipated the weight of that question. "My name is Davide," he said, "and I haven't lived on the street for years." What you've seen was a cover. A laugh rose in my throat, but stopped before coming out. It wasn't laughter. It was disbelief gasping for air. "So all this, the money, the conversations, they weren't a scam," he said softly. "Not against you. The money you gave went to character. The kindness, though, that you gave to the real man. And that, believe me, has been recorded by something more important than any file." Dr. Rinaldi, cut in before emotion, could blur facts. "Davide works with us on a delicate case. He's not your lawyer. He won't ask you for anything. He's part of an investigation. And you, Marco, are the target." "Why?" She looked at me with that thin kind of compassion professionals have when they know how much the truth will hurt. "Because your wife died. Because you have a house without advanced security. Because you've just liquidated part of an estate." She turned a page. "And because someone within your own family circle put your name on a list." A cold grip tightened around my neck. "I haven't liquidated anything." "You sold the shares of the small seaside apartment in Elena's name," she said, "to pay off the mortgage debts and settle things. It's on record." My mouth opened, then shut. It was true. I had done it 2 months earlier, on Ada's advice. Ada, my mother-in-law, who had said, "It's better to settle everything, Marco, for Mateo's sake, to move on." And I, foolish and tired, had confused better with urgent. Davide leaned forward. "Do you remember when Ada asked for a copy of Elena's death certificate? And for your online banking credentials? To help with the bureaucracy?" I froze. That memory had always felt harmless, until now. Suddenly it had claws. "That can't be," I whispered. "Ada, she's sad, not a criminal." "Sad people," said Davide with a calm bordering on cynicism, "are often the most dangerous, because they already have an excuse ready." Rinaldi showed another photo, a grainy surveillance still, 2 men at a doorway with a woman between them, seen from behind. Pale coat, stiff posture. Not enough to be sure, but my body recognized her before my mind did. That back, that stillness, like life owed her something. "It can't be her," I said. But as I did, I realized the trap. When you say it can't, you're already admitting it could. "It's her," said the lawyer. "And that's not all." She placed a yellow envelope on the table. "This material was recovered yesterday. Not from your house. From a storage unit registered in Ada's name. I didn't touch it. Just stared at it like a live animal." "Why tell me all this?" I asked harshly. "Why not just arrest her?" The lawyer took a slow breath. "Because, Marco, to arrest someone you need to configure crime and full evidence. To get that, sometimes, the target must see, must recognize, must confirm. You are the missing link between intent and act." Davide looked at me, no pity in his gaze, only respect. "I warned you because last night they'd have broken in. They were looking for documents, a lockbox, and something Elena left you without you knowing." A chill ran through me, not from mystery, but from the thought that Elena, the most straightforward person I'd ever known, had hidden something. Yet even straightforward people, when they live in crooked families, learn to conceal. What would she have left me? Rinaldi opened the envelope. A handwritten will, in Elena's familiar script, dated 6 months before her death. My breath caught, not because of its content, but because it had existed without me knowing. "I never received this," I said. "You weren't meant to," she replied. "Someone intercepted it and made sure you signed documents that made you easier to control." I read a few lines. Elena mentioned an account in her name, hidden, not a fortune, but enough to change some things. She wrote a protection for Mateo. She wrote, "If anything happens to me, don't trust Ada." A simple phrase, without theatrics. Elena wasn't theatrical. She was precise. My hands shook, and I hated them for betraying me in front of strangers. I hated that my strength had been a habit, not a choice. "She suspected," said Davide. "Not for the money. Ada never craved money. She craved control. And control, with a son and a widower, becomes an investment." Scenes I'd labeled as normal grief resurfaced. Ada insisting on helping at home. Ada criticizing how I cooked, how I talked to Mateo, how I left lights on. Ada saying, "Elena would have wanted it that way." Always Elena, as shield, as weapon. And the box. I asked. Davide gave the slightest nod. "You already have it. You just don't know." Elena was clever. She knew that to protect a child, money was enough. You have to leave proof. For the first time since the funeral, I felt cold rage. Not loud, lucid. The rage of realizing your life has been someone else's chessboard. What do? I asked, and the question was already a decision. I wasn't asking whether to believe, but how to move. Rinaldi closed her folder. "You go home. Today, with us watching. Act as if you know nothing. Let Ada believe you were there last night. It's the only way to make her commit the mistake we need." I stared. "You want me to be the bait." "We want you to be a father," she said, and that struck deeper than anything else. Because this isn't just theft. It's a dynamic, a domestic captivity disguised as grief. Davide's voice softened. "Marco, I know it sounds absurd, but the most dangerous part isn't the lock. It's what happens when someone convinces you and your son you can't cope without her. Yes, that had happened. Ada hadn't stolen my money. She'd stolen my confidence. And that's a currency no police can recover. I agreed, not out of courage, but because the shame of standing still would have been worse. And so on to the confrontation, Ada's exposure, Elena's message, and the final reflection that true love doesn't hold. It frees. I went back home in the early afternoon. The door had been hastily repaired. Inside, the air smelled of metal and forced cleanliness, like after an argument. Mateo came home shortly after, unaware, and I looked at him the way you look at someone you love while carrying a hidden guilt. I told him there had been an attempted break-in, that for safety we would change the locks. He went pale, then reacted with that adolescent anger that is nothing but fear with broad shoulders. He hugged me, but did it in a way that made it seem like he didn't want me to notice. Ada arrived in the evening, like a predator checking whether the prey had stopped breathing. She came in without knocking, with a bag full of food for you, and questions disguised as concern. "Are you all right, Marco?" she asked, and her eyes were not looking at me. They were scanning the house, the arrangement, the drawers, my face only to measure how dangerous I might be. There was an attempted burglary, I said, pretending it was just a casual piece of news. She brought a hand to her mouth, a perfect gesture. Too perfect. "My God, you were here?" "Yes, I lied." She studied me, just for a moment, but I saw a crack. Disappointment. Not worry. Disappointment. As if a plan had hit an unexpected snag. "You need to be more careful," she said at once, then added her favorite line. "Elena would have wanted it that way." I didn't answer, not out of politeness, but because if I had, I would have spat poison. I simply did something that, for Ada, must have been unforgivable. I stayed calm. That night, when Ada left, Dr. Rinaldi called me. "She bit," she said. "She'll be back tomorrow, and she'll try to get you to give her access to something. Documents, a safe, old keepsakes, anything. Will be ready." I slept little, not for fear of a thief, but for fear of the truth. Because truth, when it concerns family, doesn't just change your calendar. It changes your skin. The next day, Ada arrived with a gentler tone, more motherly, more grandmotherly. She sat down, looked at Mateo with glistening eyes, and said she had found some of Elena's things to put in order. I understood immediately. She had decided to use my wife's ghost as a final lever. "Marco," she said softly, "there's a box." Elena kept it up high, on top of the wardrobe, with letters, documents, important things. It would be right for me to keep it safe. For Mateo, you are still too shaken. I almost felt like smiling at the coldness of that mechanism. First they break you, then they use your fracture as proof that they must guide you. "What box?" I asked, feigning confusion. Ada pointed towards the bedroom. There, Elena told me that if anything happened to her, I would know what to do. Mateo looked up. "Grandma, did Mom really tell you that?" Ada took his hand. "Sweetheart, your mother trusted me. She loved me. I just want to protect you." I looked at my son, and in that instant I understood one thing. The great theft had not been the attempted break-in. It had been the systematic use of love as a chain. I went into the bedroom. I took down a box I had never noticed, but which Davide had already told me would be there, on top of the wardrobe, behind a suitcase. There, in a place too high to be random. Elena hadn't kept it there. She had hidden it. I went back into the living room and set the box on the table. Ada reached out, and in that motion I saw an almost elegant greed, like a glove sliding over a jewel. "Let's open together," I said. She hesitated. "I don't know if maybe it's better if—" "Let's open together," I repeated, my voice firm, not aggressive. Firm. Firmness, for Ada, was blasphemy. I cut the tape. Inside there were letters. Yes, but also a USB drive, and a notebook, and a sealed envelope with the words, "From Marco." Only from Marco. If Ada is present, it means I was right. Ada's face changed color imperceptibly, like a photograph losing saturation. Mateo held his breath. "Dad, what is it?" I opened the envelope. Inside, along with a letter, there was a copy of a complaint never filed. Elena had written that she feared Ada was tampering with medication, that she was monitoring her calls, that she had tried to convince her to change policy beneficiaries. Subtle things, slimy, not cinematic. A reality built detail by detail. Ada jumped to her feet. "This is madness," she said, her voice trembling, not from pain, but from fear. She was unstable in those last months. You know that. She was stressed. She made things up. I looked at her and felt a new silence inside me. A clean silence. "Don't say my wife's name to save yourself," I said quietly. "Not anymore." She took a step toward the box. I pushed her away with my hand, without violence. A minimal gesture, yet it felt like an explosion, because it was the first time I had set a physical boundary. At that moment, the front door opened. Davide walked in, but not with the appearance of a homeless man. Dark coat, badge around his neck. Behind him, 2 officers. Dr. Rinaldi followed, calm like someone who had just finished a job. Ada turned, and in her eyes finally appeared what she had hidden for years beneath the mask of grieving mother. Hatred. A cold, almost scientific hatred. "You!" she hissed at Davide. "You were?" "A man sitting in front of a library," said Davide. "And you, Ada, are a woman sitting on top of a lie." Rinaldi held out a document. "Mrs. Ada Connie, you are under arrest for attempted fraud, unlawful access to computer systems, and for orchestrating a break-in attempt with the aim of stealing documents and assets. We have recordings. We have witnesses. We have your presence on site last night." Ada laughed, and that laugh was the most frightening thing about her. Not hysterical. A laugh of contempt. "Marco," she said, ignoring everyone else. "You'd be nothing without me. I kept you going. I raised your son when you were a ghost." I felt the urge to scream, but I stayed still. And that was my revenge, not giving her the pleasure of seeing me lose shape. "You didn't keep me standing," I replied. "You kept me on my knees. And you call that love." Matteo, behind me, had wet eyes, but not with tears, with understanding. The kind that comes too early and steals a piece of childhood. He stepped forward. "Grandma, why?" Ada looked at him the way you look at an asset about to be seized. "Because your mother took everything from me," she said, the truth slipping out like a blade. "She took away my control over you. She took Marco away. She took away my right to decide." Davide stepped closer, his voice almost gentle. "That right never existed, Ada. Nobody has it. They took her away." She didn't scream. She didn't beg. But as she crossed the doorway, she turned and threw one last sentence at me, like poison pressed under the tongue. "Elena wasn't a saint. She lied to you, too." And that sentence worked. For a moment, because Elena had lied. She had hidden the will. She had hidden the box. She had hidden her fear, but not to betray me, to protect me from the time that would make me blind. In the days that followed, the city did what it always does. It turned tragedy into gossip. Ada became the crazy mother-in-law, the manipulative grandmother, the widow of an important man who had lost her mind. Some told me, "I'm sorry," with curiosity in their eyes. Some said, "Good thing you found out," as if discovery were a supermarket coupon. I quickly learned to recognize people who take pleasure in others' pain. They always have ready-made advice. The truth is, reputation did not interest me. Matteo did. Rebuilding that piece of trust Ada had eroded day after day, with the patience of a dripping tap, did. One evening, sitting in the kitchen, I opened the USB drive. There were videos of Elena, recorded in secret, not melodramatic confessions. Small fragments, her speaking softly, saying, "If you're seeing this, it means I didn't make it in time." Her smiling sadly and adding, "Don't hate her, Marco, but don't let her decide." In an audio file, Elena said a sentence that cut into me. "Family is not who holds you tight. It's who lets you breathe." I found myself crying, not like at the funeral. This time I cried with anger and gratitude together. And I understood how complex love becomes when it's truly grown up. It isn't just presence, it's strategy. It's protection without possession. With Rinaldi, we sorted out the paperwork. We changed accounts, locks, habits. Davide disappeared for a while, as men who have seen too much tend to do when they don't want to become a permanent shadow in your life. But one afternoon I went back to the library and found him there. No fake beard, no cardboard, no set. Just him, sitting on a bench with a book in his hand. He saw me and looked up. "You stopped leaving money." "I stopped paying to feel less empty," I replied, "but I haven't stopped seeing." He nodded. "That's the point." We sat in silence. A different silence. Clean, not imposed. Then he said, "You know what's most ironic? Ada didn't just want the money. She wanted the narrative. She wanted to be the woman who saved you. People like that don't steal objects. They steal roles." I looked at the library, at the door opening and closing, at people walking in with their whole lives in their pockets, without realizing it. "And I let her," I said. "No," said Davide. "You allowed it until you understood. And when you understood, you chose. Choice is the only thing pain cannot take from you if you wrench it from its hands." Over time, Matteo started breathing again. He didn't forget, because some things are never forgotten, but he stopped looking at every gesture of affection as if it hit a string. I began to live again not because life had become kinder, but because I had stopped confusing kindness with surrender. Every now and then, I wonder what would have happened if that evening I had ignored the man in front of the library. If I had gone home, slept in my bed, and let the night do its dirty work. Maybe they would have gotten in. Maybe they would have taken the box. Maybe Ada would have gone on reigning over a grief that wasn't hers. And I would have remained a polite widower, a man who says thank you while they empty his life. Tell me one thing now, honestly. If the person who consoles you is the same one who controls you, how would you tell the difference before it's too late? I realized it late, but I did realize it. And when I finally closed the door behind Ada, I understood that the real crime hadn't been trying to get into my house. The real crime had been trying to get into Elena's memory and rewrite it. And the last thing Elena left me, besides a will and evidence, was a sentence that doesn't sound like hope. It sounds like a verdict. The ones who love you don't keep you. They set you free.